Welcome to Sherlock Monthly. I am Edward G. Pettit of the Rosenbach Museum and Library in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and we are going on a biblioventure through the adventures of Sherlock Holmes. Today's episode is number 43, The Adventure of the Abbey Grange. And joining us for this episode are Ashley Polasek. Hi, Ashley. Brand new to the fold here, and our wonderful old friend Anastasia. Hi, Anastasia.
Hi, hi, good to be here.
Good, thank you. If you thought maybe Lindsay Faye was going to be on the show, I'm very sorry she couldn't be here today. And thank goodness we have someone as great as Anastasia to jump in
Oh,
and
thank you.
fill our Sherlockian void. So, hello everyone out there. Thanks for letting me know where you're coming from. It is great. Max says, old friend and old Russian woman, Anastasia. So there you go.
I'm told it's an investiture I will grow into.
Well, all righty. Well, thank you for watching Sherlock Monthly, which began in 2023 as a weekly program, Sherlock Mondays, on which we deduced, deciphered, and dissected Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes adventures in a kind of conversational annotation. We do this in the order that the stories were originally published, and you can see all those episodes on the Rosenbach's YouTube channel. Also, including now the Hound of the Baskerville special subscription series that we did, and you're in that one too, Anastasia. That's also now free to watch on our YouTube channels. And I also ask you to please consider making a donation to the Rosenbach or by becoming a member. You can do this at our website, rosenbach.org. Your support helps us create programs like this and continue to care for our collections, including our fantastic Arthur Conan Doyle works that we have. Sherlock Monthly is also brought to you by the generous support of Lisa Washington and also Belanger Books, publishers of the all-new adventures of Sherlock Holmes, Solar Ponds, and Occult Detectives. I'll give you a little more about them at our mid-break today. First, let me introduce our co-host for today. Ashley D. Polasek holds a doctorate in the study of Sherlock Holmes on screen, a subject on which she has spoken across the US, UK, and Europe. She is the editor of many books on that one shelf behind her there, all those books. She's edited or in them. She's also the author of Being Sherlock, a Sherlockian's stroll through the best Sherlock Holmes stories. Ashley now works in the theater, which I will ask you about in a minute, Ashley.
Right.
Dr. Anastasia Klimchynskaya is a scholar of 19th century literature with a deep interest in the intersection between science, technology, literature, and the cultural imagination. She called Philadelphia home while she got her PhD from the University of Pennsylvania. She has been on the Rosenbach's Sherlock Mondays. You were on Sundays with Frankenstein, and Picture of Dorian Gray, which was a subscription series we did. You're also a member of the Baker Street Irregulars, and you helped organize PhilCon, Philadelphia's
Yes.
largest or
Yeah,
oldest
yeah,
science fiction
which
convention.
is actually happening this weekend. I
Happening this
unfortunately
is the
couldn't be
year that
there,
you're
but
not doing PhilCon, and I
well,
mentioned
there's been a couple of years that I missed for, a variety of reasons. Just logistics, other commitments, that kind of thing, unfortunately, but I'll be back one day.
all righty. You are currently visiting assistant professor of English at Illinois Wesleyan University,
Yep.
where you teach Victorian literature, Gothic, and science fiction, and you have a new book.
I have a new book coming out. Yes. It is called Science Fiction in the Modern World. So for those of you, maybe not in academia or not in the humanities, scientists usually publish articles, but us people in the humanities, we do publish articles, but we also usually write full-length books on our scholarship. That's kind of the, main unit of scholarship, I guess, in the humanities. So this book is on the emergence of science fiction on the 19th century and all of the intellectual material transformations that led to the emergence of this new way of telling stories, essentially. So I unfortunately don't have a physical copy in my hands because it's not out yet. but it'll be coming out shortly. I'm very, very excited. It does talk a little bit about Sherlock Holmes as kind of a symbol of modernity and rationality and all of these ideas about the knowability of the world that is also so important to science fiction. Um, and I do mention the Rosenbach. The Rosenbach is in my acknowledgments. There's a photo from the Rosenbach collection of one of Edgar Allan Poe's republished
Oh,
stories as a manuscript, and
the
kindly sent that
mesmerism.
photo to me.
Yeah.
So, in a way, some of the research for that book began at the Rosenbach. So, this is a nice little, closing of the circle, I suppose.
Awesome. So I'm never going to close a circle with you. Always going to be connected, let me tell you.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
we have heard Anastasia's our Sherlock origin story on past episodes. You can look them up on our site and see them there. But I wanted to go over to Ashley because you're here for the first time. What's your Sherlock origin story? How did you first get interested in Sherlock Holmes?
I came to Sherlock Holmes later than most. I was studying abroad when I was in university. I was studying abroad at the University of St Andrews in Scotland. And I started dating a very nice English fellow, and we realized that the sort of lifespan of our dating relationship realistically was the one semester I was going to be in Scotland. Uh, and we decided that we would get to know each other quicker if we exchanged book lists, because that's the kind of nerds we were. Uh, I assigned him P.G. Wodehouse, and he assigned me Sherlock Holmes. And
Wow.
when I left Scotland, that relationship was over, but I remain in a committed relationship with Sherlock Holmes.
But you were Woodhouse first.
Wodehouse first.
That's
Yep.
interesting. I'm not sure. I know. I think all the Woodhouse people I know were Sherlockians first. So,
I'm a rebel. What can I say?
how'd you get interested in Woodhouse first? Let's do a Woodhouse show, everybody.
I think I mean, true to form, because my all of my academic work is in the field of adaptation studies. I started with a deep dive into Hugh Laurie and Stephen Fry,
Yeah,
and that took me to their Jeeves and Wooster series,
yeah.
which led me back to the Woodhouse books. So
Awesome. I love that stuff. So, what was it about Sherlock that really grabbed you and like you like this is something I want to keep reading and hang out with a bunch of other Sherlockian nerds who want to talk to you about it?
it felt like such a rich world to live in, and it's such concise, perfect storytelling, the short stories especially. Um, it's such a rich, clear narrative world, and I think that was very evocative. And I mean, as ever, you can't divorce your experience of reading a story from the story itself and its influence on you. And because of I guess the age I was reading them sort of one story at a time in a used book that I bought for £3 at a bookstore down the road in Scotland, and I was under a duvet reading them by flashlight while, it was February and the North Sea was crashing outside my window, and I think it all just sunk in very deeply.
Hmm. That's wonderful. Yeah, and and the Jeeves and Wooster, I mean, Woodhouse himself has said that, yeah, there's a little bit of Sherlock Holmes
Oh, he's a huge
going on
Sherlockian.
there. Yeah.
And I started doing a chronological reread of Woodhouse, starting the very beginning with the school stories. And I've been noting all of the sort of explicit and implicit Sherlockian references, especially in those early stories. It's really
Yeah.
something. Yeah.
And one of the earliest parody pastiches is by Woodhouse, right?
Yes. Yes,
Sherlock.
that's right.
Yeah. Alrighty. Well, Ashley, I know you from so many meetings and other things of watching you demonstrate 19th century combat or maybe all combat. So that's something
Yeah,
you
you
do
did
as
a
well.
fantastic job of that in Ohio, and then I think we went to Waffle House, and it was
Yeah, that sounds like me. Single stick and waffles.
it was quite an experience.
Yeah, my background in historical martial arts is actually medieval and Renaissance. So primarily my work has been with like this kind of thing,
Uh-huh.
right?
Can we pause to like Ashley just has a sword sitting there, like ready to pull out
There you
for when
go.
this comes up?
So this is the kind of weapon that I've competed in and I've trained in the most.
Mm.
But because of the Sherlockian connections, my Baker Street Irregulars investiture is single stick because that's the kind of swordplay that Sherlock Holmes practiced. So when I got invested as single stick, I got so excited that I had a Sherlockian single stick made for myself, which hangs on my wall.
Uh-huh.
And that's the sort of weapon that Holmes trained in. It's actually a game rather than a weapon system,
Yeah.
first and foremost.
Well, a game that could do quite a bit of damage.
Yes, actually, in the rules of single stick, I've never competed in it. I've seen people compete in it, and it's so vicious. Now, I just showed you a giant steel sword. I will compete in that, but the wood thing, because part of the game is a thing called pain compliance, which means since you can only score by hitting the other person in the head, one of the things you can do is whap them really hard somewhere else. And if you whack them the same place a couple of times, they start to like flinch and try to defend that spot. And that's when you can hit them in the head. So you're not allowed to wear protective gear beyond a protective helmet and then nothing more than like a sweatshirt so that you
Goodness.
can actually be made to engage in pain compliance. And
Yeah.
I was watching people compete in this and they were hitting each other. The motion was so fast and so hard on the single sticks that you could smell the wood burning because it was wood on wood. And people were dropping like flies. I said, I'm too old. My knees are too crunchy. I can't do it. I'll do it in demonstration. I'll do it in study, but I'm not going to compete in it because my knees will just break.
Oh
I
my.
mean, that honestly just sounds like Fight Club. Like just
Yeah, no, it was.
and maybe women just going at
It
it.
was a brawl. It was bad. There were a lot of like grown men crying.
Well, this
On
story,
that note,
yeah, this story today has no. Well, no, it does have a fight. Yeah, no, there is.
it
Well,
has a
yeah,
lot of
there's definitely
people
a
beating
fight.
people in it,
So
actually,
yeah,
and
Yeah,
leaving bruises.
for Sherlock, unfortunately, Sherlock doesn't get into it with anybody,
he does not.
but we do have a fight in it, and it's also a one of your favorite stories, Ashley.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It
Awesome.
is. I think Lady Mary is a very interesting character because Conan Doyle was not always great at writing women, and she's pretty impressive comparatively for his female characters. Yeah.
All righty. Well, let us get into it. And do this. Let me share the story's first published in uh September 1904 in the Strand. And here is the Strand cover for us to gander. Um, the And at the top here, we've seen this the last, few stories with the um with the heading with not only Conan Doyle but Sarah Bernhardt because they've been running this memoir in the Strand at this time. W. Jacobs we've seen before, very popular author at the time, but a couple new names up here this time that kind of relate to Holmes. One of them is Max Pemberton, who was a very popular mystery adventure author at the time and was also a member of the Crimes Club, which was a social club that met a few times a year, and Doyle was one of the founding members of it, to discuss true crime. They would discuss old cases and things, that have to do with criminology. I think Bertram Fletcher, P.G. Woodhouse was in the Crimes Club, I believe, and it still exists today as a group called Our Society, which sounds, I don't know, almost a little bit creepy. Our Society, but it's still the Crimes Club, and it's got a straight tradition, connection right through. Um, and the other name on this the top of this magazine here is E.W. Horning, the brother-in-law of Sherlock of Arthur Conan Doyle, who wrote the Raffles stories. Raffles was kind of like the flip side of Sherlock. He's the criminal who, also kind of does good for people in some ways. Um, uh, but this Strand issue does not have a Raffles story. It's one of his Stingery stories. His Stingery tales were about an outlaw named Stingery and his adventures in Australia. So, but the Australian connection, of course, connects with today. In the As people opened this issue, the first story was Abbey Grange, and it began with this illustration. Usually, the illustrations deal with something towards the end. The opening illustration deals with something towards the end of the story or some great discovery. And here it's interesting that they decided just to put the crime scene, which we see very early on in the story, but which is a good place to begin, and I think would really draw the readers to this. I'll share this again later, maybe when we get to it, but there's a couple other Paget illustrations in this one that are really good. The Colliers American came out in the end of December 1904, and with one of the great Frederick Dorr Steele covers, which I always love. And it says, you see at the top here, it says, next to the last Sherlock Holmes story ever to appear. Which was Doyle's plan. It was repeatedly his plan. Every time he do a new batch of stories, it was, this is the last batch that I'm going to do.
Well, when the next story begins, I had intended for the Abbey Grange to be the last story.
And then he does one more. Oh, is that picture still there? Did I knock that away?
Seems to have vanished.
There it is. Sorry. Yeah, he decided that he was going to finish this up, and then he said one more, and that'll be the second stain, which we'll do in our next episode. But as far as I mean, that's some people did think maybe it was going to be the end. I like this illustration, but boy, is it odd. It almost looks like some kind of Holmes is contemplating some kinky, activity that's going to happen soon, with the ropes all on this, almost, oh, I did it again, all with this medieval looking chair. But a great profile of him that Dorr Steele has mastered here. And usually the title illustrations have been really interesting. This one's a little, I don't know. It's a little kind of mundane. This is a horse carriage coming through here. It's the fog I think he was going for to demonstrate, which we have in the opening of the story. So, but nothing, and which I guess does serve as a good emblem for this story. And then I like the chair that he's, illustrated here for the first initial.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great chair.
Yeah.
It is. What I really want to do is try to zoom in as much as I can on the knots, because they're part of the clue. And I'm always curious about which of the sailors' knots he used.
Yeah. Not on this picture.
No.
We'd have to get a really,
They were pretty visible on the main illustration, the previous one.
Yeah. Are they? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is this supposed to be some kind of semblance of a sailor's knot here?
Yeah, I mean, it looks like maybe he's doing Boland's, non-slipping loops.
Yeah. Some kind of
Clove hitch at the top.
hitch going on here. Yeah. I don't know. It's been a long time since I've done knots. Long time since Boy Scouts, which I was so proud I learned all these knots, and now I've completely forgotten them all. This is when I needed Max on the show to bring all his Eagle Scout knowledge in and tell me.
But Ashley's a sailor, isn't it? Like, Ashley, you just got a sailing.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I'm newly into sailing, so I've been sitting in my study, like literally just tying knots so I can pass my certifications and everything.
So do you recognize that? I mean, does this look like anything that you recognize down the bottom here?
Well, again, I would have thought that he would have used Boland's, but the bitter end of that rope is going in the wrong direction for that.
All righty.
But so that could just be, Frederick Dorsteel not having practiced his own knots very well. Going for aesthetics rather than reality.
As we want him to do, I think.
Sure. Artistic license, it's fine.
Yes, he's allowed that.
Who cares if it's an important clue?
Let's jump right into the story. Usually I hit some of the ads in the Colliers. I didn't find any of them that were particularly interesting. I don't know if you guys did, or I don't know if you saw the Anastasia.
Well, no, I've been. This is trigger warning for anybody who doesn't, like their books destroyed. But this is like the other half fell out. This is the edition I've had since I was like 18 and in college. So yeah, I don't have pictures. Yeah, I have my notes from when I was 18, though.
I'm sure those are deeply insightful and not at all embarrassing.
I mean, actually, some of them are, but you can kind of see, okay, so I didn't have all of this literary, historical, theoretical, critical knowledge about literature and history that I then got with my PhD. So it's like, I was very precocious and really trying to figure out these stories without any of the tools that like a degree in literary study gives you. So I was on the right track. I just didn't have the right tools.
All righty. Well, let's get into this. This, just as a general observation coming back to this story, it's kind of it's almost like it's like a Gothic story, but the danger for the woman has passed. And now let's get into this. I mean, not even the explanation, like there's still something else going on, but but that's something.
I mean, the danger for her has not entirely passed in that, she could still be arrested and courts in England in 1897, I don't think would have been too kind to her being an accomplice to her husband's murder.
Yeah. All righty. Well, let's hear about how that happened. It opens with the weather. It was a bitterly cold and frosty morning during the winter of 97. This begins. It was actually the end of 97 in the original manuscript. And if you looked at the Collier's text, they have the end of 97. The Strand has the winter of 97. Something we've discovered doing many of these, it seems that almost certainly when there are differences in text between the American and the British, it's because the manuscript and then the typescript that Doyle had made from the manuscript is what they're using for the American editions. But the Strand has editorial practices and sometimes can consult Doyle to make changes, and they do that sometimes. So Doyle didn't necessarily make that change. The Strand may have, or they may have asked him, but it was a late change perhaps. But it's the end, it's either December 97 or January, February 97, which makes a whole year's difference in a sense over when chronologists have to place this story.
Mm-hmm. But regardless, it's such a beautiful atmospheric description with the winter, and then you get the opalescent London, later on, and just like
Yeah.
the fog, and I just love the atmospheric descriptions here.
Yes. But let's start before we get to the atmospheric descriptions. We get one of the greatest lines in all of Sherlock, right? Come, Watson, come, he cried. The game is afoot. Um, waking him up with the game is afoot. This is actually the third time he's used the word afoot in the canon, but it's the first time he has said the game is afoot. In the sign, or way early on in the Sign of Four, he talks about he uses afoot, and in Reigate Squires as well. But now it's that phrase that we're all accustomed to. The game is afoot.
And there's actually a great episode of the recent kind of crime show Poker Face, where an episode is called "The Game Is a Foot," and like a foot, as in, the a person's leg, is the key to the crime.
The for I don't know that one. What is that again?
It's called Poker Face. It's a
Oh,
recent
Poker
show.
Face. Yeah.
Mhm.
No, I haven't seen that yet.
Well, they just canceled it, but the 2 seasons we
Oh,
do
they
have
did?
are excellent.
I read they're trying to find another way to bring it back, though.
With Peter Dinklage.
Yeah.
Mm.
Oh, that would be cool. Yeah.
Well, I hope they
Oh.
do.
Well, the kind of game as afoot has a long history, and some people know it's actually, and probably where Doyle could have seen it in Shakespeare. It's both at the end of the Henry V's once more into the breach speech. He says the game's afoot, follow your spirit. But it's also in Henry IV Part 1. Somebody says it to Hotspur. The game is afoot, but it's in Walter Scott's Ivanhoe. And it's also in a ballad that Walter Scott had written. The game's afoot, halloo, halloo, hunter and horse and hound pursue. Doyle would have come across it there, but it's a hunting term, which is interesting because I think it often people think the terminology means, oh, there's a certain game that's going on right now that has begun, but the game in it literally refers to game as in a hunted animal in the game's afoot in its original phrase.
Well, Conan Doyle uses a lot of hunting terminology. I mean, Anastasia, you and I both contributed to Ross Davies' fox hunting.
Yeah.
Yes.
Where we were dealing with the Conan Doyle story, King of the Foxes, and you did the annotations for it, right? For the story.
I did the annotation. Yes, I did the annotations.
And I wrote an essay on the sort of literary Conan Doyle and the literary use of fox hunting all the way through his stories. And so, even sleuth hound is a hunting term, and Conan Doyle was an avid fox hunter.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, as Sherlockians, we play the game, the whole game, pretending Sherlock Holmes is real. So it's kind of taken on this new meaning in Sherlockiana.
Doyle was never a big game hunter, though, was he?
Not a big game hunter, no.
I know his son did, but he himself didn't, and it's a little surprising with the interest he has in adventure and travel that he never became a big game
Yes,
hunter.
you'd think based on his mustache he would be a big game hunter, and yet.
I also wonder, because this is, and I think the phrase is used again. The game is afoot by Watson, a narration later in a late story, I think Wisteria Lodge. But I don't know when this game is afoot became so associated with Sherlock. I was trying to figure it out, but I can't seem to pinpoint it. I wonder if there's any Sherlockians out there that might know. I'm wondering, is it because I don't think it's in the Gillette play, which where we get elementary, my dear, comes from. But I don't know where game is. I wonder if Basil Rathbone had said it in the film. I couldn't figure out whether Rathbone had ever said it, but at some point it becomes very associated with Sherlock Holmes. And now where if you say the game is afoot, it's used as puns constantly for just Sherlock, not for Shakespeare or for hunting or anything else. It's always about Sherlock. And I wonder at what point in the 20th century that happened.
Well, now I'm gonna have to go rewatch every film.
Yeah, watch all the Rathbones. At some point, somebody said it, and then it became a thing because that they said it. I think is probably the way it
I mean,
happened.
this is what they
Could've been
pay us
Rathbone.
academics to do.
That's it.
Like, you're gonna go binge watch Sherlock Holmes for research.
Yeah, I've got my Conan Doyle bookcase here, but I've got the Sherlock Holmes film
Yeah.
case over there off screen. So I'll just raid that. I'll start with, what's the earliest? I guess the earliest one I have there is the Gillette. And I'll go, maybe some clever chap used it in an intertitle in a
Yeah.
silent film, and it just
Yeah.
took.
And it just took off. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it's good work if you can get it. This is what I do. I get paid to do this stuff. It's crazy. Now we have that moment, Anastasia, and I love this too, where they get in the cab, rattling through the silent streets on their way to Charing Cross Station. The first faint winter's dawn beginning to appear dimly. We could dimly see the occasional figure of an early workman as he passed us, blurred and indistinct in the opalescent London reek. This is, I mean, this is the Vincent Starrett poem. I mean, this is
I mean, yeah, you think, why do people always sort of like think Sherlock Holmes is full of like gas lamps and whatnot? It's like because of descriptions like this, but then you get the opalescent London, and you're like, oh, that's so beautiful, opalescent. Then he goes, the opalescent London reek, like it reeks.
Yeah. He knows what
like,
it is.
Sorry, we've got the fog and the gas lamps, and it's pretty, but also it smells.
Yeah.
Right. Like when do you see an opalescent puddle? When it's petroleum, right? Like it's not, opalescent is nice if you're looking at a pearl. It's not what you want to see, in the air you're breathing.
Yep.
But has been romanticized. It's this, London
Sure.
fog that, and that adds this mystery and, real kind of exoticism to these places.
Absolutely. It's marvelous for those of us who didn't have to die of it.
Yeah, they didn't have to die in it. Thank you. Well, they get to the train and they get on the train, and Sherlock shares this note, my dear Mr. Holmes, and it's from Stanley Hopkins. Oh, Stanley's back again. Stanley has been in almost every story this season. He appears in four. His name is in four. He appears in three. He's in Black Peter. He's in Golden Pince-Nez, and now he's in this story. He even says that to Watson, he's been 7 cases he's had with him. But we only get 4. And yeah, 7 times he's called me in, Holmes tells Watson. I wonder what the other 3 were. Well, I guess they're some of the unpublished cases.
Well, but Holmes even says, I think all of the ones that he's called us in on have made it into your chronicles. Clearly that's not true.
Well, not yet. So yeah. Because I'm sure because I think the conceit too is like Watson writes up a story and Sherlock reads it, but then they're published whenever they're published, and some of them Holmes says you're not publishing that, and then later.
So these aren't the unwritten chronicles. They're somewhere.
Yes. But this is his last appearance. I often wonder if if Doyle just kind of got tired of Lestrade and wanted somebody new and something to work off of, and pulled
or he forgot Lestrade's name and just went with the next guy.
And pulled in Hopkins for several stories, and then forgot Hopkins's name, and then it became Lestrade again.
He's not going to look it up. What was that detective I created? Nah, let's just make a new one. Fine.
Exactly.
There's a couple manuscripts that we know that he gets a name wrong, and then corrects it later. And
infamously, is it John or James Watson?
Right. Yeah, but also Mrs. Hudson name change is Mrs. Taylor. I can't remember.
Turner, I think.
Mrs. Turner in an Empty House, actually. Yeah. But then there's a story that he's writing. We just did it recently. I can't remember which one it was, where he says the name in the beginning written out, and then later in the story he's leaving blanks that he then filled in because he didn't even want to turn back a few pages to get the name again. That's just, that which was his writing process. Don't stop once you start. And now we get another one of these. So we're hitting this story. This story opens, he's going back to the tried and true, it seems to me, ways that he starts Sherlock stories. The quick summons, the setting out in the fog, a journey on a train. We've seen this in so many stories. And now we get two pieces here. One is where he starts criticizing Watson for the way he writes up his adventures.
No.
Goes all the way back to Sign of Four. Honestly, I cannot congratulate you upon writing my stories. Detection is or ought to be an exact science and should be treated in the same cold and unemotional manner. You have attempted to tinge it with romanticism, which produces much the same effect as if you worked a love story or an elopement into the fifth proposition of Euclid. And that's Sign of Four. Yeah. And now it's, you have the fatal habit of looking at everything from the point of view of a story instead of as a scientific exercise, which is, and I think one of the things that doesn't get often mentioned here is the irony that this takes on for a reader who is reading for everything Watson does is exactly what the reader wants. And what Sherlock wants, the reader would never, like those stories wouldn't appear.
Yeah. And of course, it discounts what we sort of understand philosophically, which is that everything is stories.
Yeah.
That, all reality is a story that we are constantly telling. Our personalities are stories that we tell ourselves and tell other people. Science is a story through which we understand reality. So take that, Holmes. What do you know? Take more humanities classes. Stop skipping literature.
That's what I tell all the, science and business majors in my sci-fi class.
Yeah, all the engineers. This matters.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And it also leads this, I think this kind of criticism also from Sherlock, it also contributes to that idea of him that we get, that he himself is cold, emotionless, and he's never that in the stories. But he seems to, that's the way he wants to be.
That's the story he tells himself about himself?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he thinks of himself as a scientist, and a scientist has to be objective when sort of doing their experiments, right? But that doesn't mean that, like, you just don't have a capacity for feeling. It's just that you put it aside when you're doing your work, which...
Right, but a good scientist recognizes their biases. They don't pretend they don't have them.
That's true. That's true.
That's a good point. Does Sherlock rep know his biases?
You have to interrogate and try to adjust or make some kind of allowance for your biases. If you don't, then you're not doing good science. I don't think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Is he blind to it, do you think, himself? Does he not know himself in that way? I wonder. This is something
again, this is what happens when you never read fiction. You sort of, know a lot of scientific facts about the world, but you don't know anything about like emotions or human cycle. Like you don't develop the emotional intelligence you need to be a human being.
Yeah.
Including, recognizing your own shortcomings or whatnot. Yeah.
But he does, and we see this so many times of how he is able to, be sympathetic and empathetic and the way he approaches people.
Well, he certainly has those feelings, but whether he recognizes them in himself, I'm not so sure. I think when he says, I'm a machine, I'm a thinking machine, the rest of me is mere appendix. I think he believes that about himself.
Mm-hmm.
It's not accurate, but I think he believes it.
Mm-hmm.
But Watson certainly sees the human side and gives us the human side.
Watson sometimes believes Holmes is Watson is prone to thinking that Holmes is just a thinking machine when he also should know better.
Well, Sherlock is going to devote his declining years to the composition of a textbook which shall focus the whole art of detection into one volume. Another thing we see constantly out there at the Sherlock world is the wish for that volume and those who can create it, actually. They've been called because there is, and then the second thing he does is, this is a frequent trope in the stories that at the beginning is that Sherlock will go through something where he'll demonstrate his powers, right? Somebody comes in and he describes them and tells them why he knows this about them, or he'll do it with Watson and then usually make Watson look foolish. But here he does it. Here Doyle's put this in an interesting way in the story, in that he's just figuring out why they're going on this trip through the message they got from Hopkins, right? He can deduce that it's, they're moving into a high class of society for this by the paper and the monogram and the coat of arms. That it was a murder, it had to be a murder for Hopkins to call them in, and he knows what time the murder happened because of the trains and what time it would have taken them to get to London to get him the note. So it's an interesting way for, I think, Doyle to add this bit of Sherlock magic, Sherlock doing the trick.
It's a way to do the client thing without a client present.
Yeah.
Because he's being consulted by the police instead of a client, which
Yeah.
is usually the way that manifests.
And just a nice twist on it too, because
it is. It's
Hopkins coming to him into the room and saying, "Hey, here's what's happened. Can you come and look at this with me?" Like he's done in, I think, Black Peter. But here we get a different way of going about it, where it's just Holmes describing it to Watson. Okay, well, they get to the Abbey Grange, and we find out that Sir Eustace Brackenstall has been robbed and murdered. His head has been knocked in with his own poker. But it turns out that Hopkins says, I'm sorry I brought you in because it looks like it was just a local gang, the Randalls. And Holmes has been called in for nothing. Of course, we know that can't possibly be the case because we have a story that Watson has chosen to recount for us. Although we didn't get in the beginning of the stories, we frequently get some of these stories too, is the, I've chosen to write this story because, of the extraordinary means by which, Holmes does things. And we don't get any setup from Watson in this. Matter of fact, it's really Holmes coming in to interrupt Watson, wake him up, and to haul him out.
Yeah. Also, has the statute of limitations passed? Is it what is the statute of limitations? Because now he's the whole point of the end.
Yeah.
Right?
We know from past stories that she must be dead if he's writing the story,
or he must be. Somebody is dead,
or out of the country. Well, but
it's her maybe they both went to Australia.
Yeah, maybe they went back to Australia.
Yeah.
Parts unknown. They go in to see Lady Brackenstall first. Before Holmes looks at the crime scene, they go in to see Lady Brackenstall, and Watson admires the ladies, doesn't he?
As always. Well, actually, even before we get to that, can we take a moment to just look at the description of the mansion and sort of the setup? Yeah. So first of all, Holmes says, "We are moving in high life, Watson. Crackling paper, EB monogram, coat of arms, picturesque address." So, this is high society, right? They're not dealing, if there's a crime that happened here and it wasn't the gang, we're not dealing with common criminals. We're dealing with crime within high society. And we might think also about the illustrious client. The Victorians were always worried about the criminality of the lower classes, but here we have, kind of like Jekyll and Hyde, crime potentially being committed in high society by high society people, and the sort of all the Victorian anxieties about that. Um, and then going back to what you were saying about the Gothic, with, they get to this mansion with a park gate, a noble park, lines of ancient elms, a low, widespread house pillared in front after the fashion of Palladio. Palladio is a famous Renaissance architect, so it's, got all of the like Greek columns and everything. So not only is it sort of an elite upper class family, but it's an elite upper class family that like has money, has history, has pedigree, right? They're not nobodies, they're not newly rich. Like this is a man with a title who, should by Victorian standards be sort of an upstanding gentleman, like a good example of Victorian ideals. But as we learn, he is anything but. And that contrast between sort of his history, his pedigree, and then the fact that he's a violent drunk, I think would have been very striking for the Victorians.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even that use of vocabulary there. There's an old lodge keeper, the ancient elms, the Palladio being an older Renaissance term, great age and shrouded in ivy. That
it's so Gothic.
Yeah,
it's so Gothic.
Yet the one wing of the house appeared to be entirely new, and that's where the trouble happens, right?
It's this interesting contrast between sort of on the one hand, this ancient family with this ancient home with this noble title, and on the other hand, Sherlock Holmes with his modernity and his science, who's gonna penetrate into it.
And the youthful figure and alert, eager face of Inspector Stanley Hopkins standing at the door. I mean, that's the contrast there. This is this old Gothic world, and now we're, dealing with new issues that are, that come from it.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. Thank you for bringing that up. And he's a baronet. This is a hereditary, knighthood that he has. There will be no more Brackenstalls after this, but unless he has siblings. But it's at least the end of the line through him. They go to meet Lady Brackenstall and Watson always. I was gonna say, and if she's a beautiful woman, he certainly lets you know. But if she's not, he lets you know. I can't help but think of Case of Identity.
Yeah,
where he's so mean.
Yeah,
Lady
also, all that Victorian like phrenology, physiognomy, whatever, we get it later also in the description of the sailor who committed the crime. Like, she's blonde and golden haired and blue eyed, and it turns out that she's, the epitome of, well, I don't know about the epitome, but like she's a good person. She's not a bad person.
Yeah, she's good.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, is there a story up to this point? Because I don't talk about later stories. Is there a story up to this point where we get a beautiful woman who's bad? I can't think of one. I think somebody in the chat, if you have one, like a beautiful woman that Watson describes as beautiful, because I think Doyle is still on the kick here that beauty means good in women.
Mm-hmm.
Well, arguably,
there are.
Go ahead. Arguably, Beryl Stapleton is not. She's complicit.
Mm-hmm.
We forget that, and
so much a victim, and then and that's really played up towards the end of that story, where she has really been victimized and put in this position that she kind of had to go through with this stuff.
Usually, we have beautiful women who sort of manipulate or maybe even commit crimes, but do so sort of in self-defense or for justifiable reasons. I'm thinking, Kitty Winter.
Yeah, though that story is later than this one.
That's later. Yeah.
But usually if there's a beautiful woman and she's bad, she's foreign. Yeah. The thing about Lady Mary now depends on your definition of foreign, because, South Australia, but she does have this kind of pure, very white English rose kind of description, right? He mentions that she's blonde and golden haired, so he wants to tell us she's blonde twice, blue eyed, that her complexion was perfect and pale, and only marred by the bruise upon her face. And also that her body is perfect. And of course, she's in, a sheer dressing gown that's blue and silver. I'm sure it sets off her eyes and her hair and blah, blah, blah. So, that stands in contrast to any of the beautiful, quote unquote, exotic women, particularly for Conan Doyle, women from Latin America, tend to represent the opposing kind of image there, because they are beautiful, but beautiful in an entrapping kind of way, as opposed to beautiful in a victim kind of way. But one of the reasons I like this story so much is because she could so easily just be a swooning victim, and she's not. She actually has a lot more agency than that.
Yeah. Claire reminds us in the chat that of the most winning woman I ever knew, murdered her 3 children, or whatever that quote is from an early Sherlock Holmes story that he says, but we don't meet her. And then somebody mentioned Irene Adler, but she's not bad.
Despite what adaptations will tell you.
What's that?
Despite what adaptations will tell you.
Yes.
Adaptations always make her, the villain, or like this seductress or whatever. And
victim, villain, vixen.
Yeah.
Those are your choices for Victorian women.
Yeah. So I think we'll see more of this in later stories, especially the more, exotic Latin American women. But I think that's that's a clue for us, and I think it's assumed by readers, but it's also certainly assumed by Watson here, that if you encounter a woman that looks like this, as you said, especially the fair golden kind of woman, that she's good in a way. But this one certainly has a lot. She's not well, she does faint. Well, does she? No, she doesn't faint. She says she faints in her story, but she's not the fainting, type. This one. He even can't, and she's got a black eye, and but Watson, he can't even, he has to even describe her clothes. She was enveloped in a loose dressing gown of blue and silver, but a black sequin covered dinner dress hung upon the couch beside her. So Watson,
steady Watson.
Yeah, every time. And we find out she's from South Australia. A colonial connection story. Usually in stories that deal with Australia or the colonies or foreign connection, they're usually not good people, or they've done something, or something has happened that they brought with them. But in this story, she's the innocent one in this story. And
in this story, the crime and the rot kind of comes from within, from this pedigreed high class nobleman, rather than from, a foreigner.
Yeah, I mean, it's so frequent, that trope of the poison coming from the outside. So you think of Special Band, right? Where Roylott was fine, and then he went to India and became crazed, and he brought quite literally, he brings India back with him in the form of all of these dangerous beasts, right?
Well, and the sign of the four.
Yep, same thing.
Where what's his name? I'm sorry, the names escape me. Went to India, and we get the sense that, like, it's what made him violent, it's what made him savage, it's what made him join this, whole conspiracy.
Right. Or if you're sent to Australia, of course, you're sent as a criminal. And any kind of re-entry back into English society is going to be problematic. But that's not the case with Mary. She's I forget, we don't learn why she comes, right? We don't know what her family background is.
Not that I know of now.
I mean, I think the suggestion is maybe that, there's not a lot of men of marriageable material in Australia. And so she kind of comes to England to marry, maybe.
To England and meet a rich knight, meet a rich baronet. And she does on the boat. She meets him.
Well, she meets Croker on the
Oh,
boat.
did she meet both of them? No, it was just Croker on the boat.
No, yeah,
No, she meets the baronet in London.
in
Okay,
London.
Baronet's in
But
London.
like
Yeah, you're right.
it's the case takes place what 18 months after
Yeah,
the boat passage,
yeah,
which means in the course of 1.5 years, she's landed, she's snagged herself a rich baronet, and now he's dead and she inherits his money, I hope. That's always my hope for her. So she doesn't waste any time. But you get the impression from Watson's description of her and from her intelligence and the way she carries herself and
yeah.
all of that, that she must have come from some wealth in Australia. Though she's traveling only with her maid, she's not traveling with a a male chaperone of any kind. She's not traveling with a father or a
Yeah.
brother, which you would think, given I'm assuming her youth, she'd never been on a ocean voyage before. I'm assuming that she's quite young. So maybe, father died in Australia, no mother, whatever.
These stories too, from the late 19th and the early 20th century, are usually the rich women who come and marry the titled men. But here, this seems, maybe it's not, but it seems as if she's marrying into the money. But I don't know. I don't
She's
think
marrying the money and the
yeah,
title.
because he
Usually
is. He's
one has
called one of the
one.
richest men. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's called one of the richest men in Kent. So,
Yeah.
so she's marrying into the money here.
Yeah. She acquires money and title, and it's not worth it.
Because he is a confirmed drunkard. And to be with such a man for an hour is unpleasant. That's where it starts with the that he's bad guy because he's a drunkard. It is very much this, moral failing being a drunkard in this, not what we think of now. It's he's addicted to alcohol and that's a problem with him. That's a medical issue with him. He has a moral failing, and that moral failing also leads him to be a horrible person and abuse her and set her dog on fire. Later we learn. And she right away, she's explaining how he's dead, and she goes right into this whole description of how, he's awful, and it's a sacrilege, a crime, a villainy to hold that such a marriage is binding. I say that these monstrous laws of yours will bring a curse upon the land. She's quite forthright right from the start, isn't she?
Well, that's the Australian in her.
She is. And I mean, I want to give Conan Doyle some credit here, because in the description there are a couple of Conan Doyle is so good at being concise and describing a lot with very few words. But he describes, what she says is, to be tied to such a man day and night, which only gives you a hint that this, I mean, we understand that this abuse is entire, right? We know that he's hurting her physically because he hits her and gives her a black eye. He's stabbing her with a hat pin. He douses her dog in petroleum and sets him on fire. So I would like to douse him in petroleum and set him on fire. Stay away from my dog, you monster. He's abusive to her servants through a decanter at Teresa, called her the worst name a man can call a woman. We can only imagine what that might be. But then to be tied to such a man day and night, we assume that there's also sexual abuse, which in this time period, the whole concept of rape within marriage didn't even exist.
Yeah.
So for Conan Doyle to include that as part of the kind of system of abuse that's going on, I think is more forward thinking than, I mean, Conan Doyle's politics were not always good. But in this area, I think it's more forward thinking than we would usually give him credit for.
Yeah, I was really struck by that.
Yeah, and she's specific, and it's something that Doyle himself is specific about. What he combats is the marriage laws in England.
Yeah,
that women are very limited in the reasons they can use for filing for divorce.
yeah.
And Sir Eustace's behavior isn't reason for them. She could get a legal separation, but but then she can't remarry anyway. So, it's kind of, then she's stuck just being, single and alone and
Then
being
then
supported by
she's a
her.
ruined thing in
Yeah.
society.
Yeah, and what money does she live on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing. So she has no recourse. And the grounds for divorce, I mean, even getting a divorce at all was so expensive to even bring someone up in divorce court. It was impossibly expensive. So out of reach of most people in society anyway. She may have been able to afford it at her level, but the grounds for a woman divorcing a husband and a man divorcing his wife, the standards are very different. Yeah. So he can say she's cheating on me, and that's grounds for divorce for him. That's not grounds for divorce for her. Physical abuse is not grounds for divorce for her. I think they're very limited things. She has to prove something like incest or bestiality. Those are grounds for divorce, but the standard of evidence is very high. So I don't know if you have to present him in court with the horse. I'm not sure, but it's just like, it was an impossible deal. And Conan Doyle was very publicly a proponent of divorce law reform for reasons I'm sure that were quite personal to him. But again, his politics are not great in a lot of other areas, right? He was anti-suffrage. I mean, I would think of him as quite conservative, and certainly by modern standards, but even by Victorian standards, he was conservative in a lot of areas, but not when it came to this subject.
Mm-hmm.
And this story is really a treatise. It's taking what people would ignore if you wrote it in a pamphlet, and if you make it into a story like Watson would, people will listen to it. It's one of the reasons another reason I like this story so much.
Mm-hmm.
It's very Dickensian in a sense. He's taken this, social issue that he'd love to see change and that he campaigns about and writes about all the time in the press. And he's put it in a way that, okay, this is a way to really show people what this could be like.
And he's quite good at that too. It's the same thing he does, all of his pamphlets and writing on spiritualism would never have accomplished what Land of Mist, for instance, does, because he puts it into a story and people will absorb stories.
Mm-hmm.
Well, she is no shrinking violet, and she describes now she describes the scene. She tells her story of what the crime that happened is, that, these robbers came in, they hit her, they gagged her, they tied her to the chair with a bell rope. Her husband comes in. He comes in, I love this note, with his favorite blackthorn cudgel.
Not his second best one.
Yeah, actually, I'm sure you have a favorite sword, but that says something about you, that you would have a favorite weapon. He has a favorite cudgel. Something I will use to just beat something with.
And a blackthorn cudgel is a wicked instrument. It's not a gentleman's weapon.
No.
A blackthorn cudgel is thick. It's knotty. It has knots on it, and it's a heavy thing. If you were a gentleman, you might have a leaded walking stick, for instance, for self-defense. You don't carry a blackthorn cudgel unless you're a villain.
Well, I'm sure this has got notches in it. So, he is he's hit the robbers hit him with a poker. She faints, but then she wakes up. She sees them drinking wine. Her description of these men, the older one with the beard and the two younger ones, fits the description of the Randalls, who have just robbed the house recently in the area. So the maid, Teresa Wright, confirms the story. And we learn that she's been with her all her life. She's nursed her as a baby. So this is like a second mother figure that she has taking care of her from Australia. This is why Hopkins is like, sorry, I've called you in. There's nothing going on here. Of course she's telling me the truth. Look at her. Just look at her. Right? The black eye too, like, and she's had this terrible marriage. She's telling us the truth. So
yeah. But it's not so. I mean, Stanley Hopkins is one of the smarter officers, so he believes her. But Holmes believes her too, right? He knows something's wrong, and yet, I mean, he has to say later, we mustn't let her charm, how charming she is, cloud our judgment. But he did long enough to get on the damn train.
Yeah.
So he's not immune to her
And
blondie blonde, golden
and
blonde,
what's great is
blue-eyed
we
blonde
don't get
hair.
the opposite here, which is great. We don't get like she's not the femme fatale in the end.
No.
It's not that she's evil. It's a much more complicated situation where, yes, she's lying about this story, but but that doesn't make her bad.
Right.
So, well, we'll get to that towards the end. Makes it complicated. Um, Let me take this moment to thank all of you for watching this episode. As a nonprofit organization, the Rosenbach Museum and Library depends on the generosity of friends and supporters like you to keep programs like this free and accessible to hundreds of fellow Sherlockians worldwide. I hope you will consider supporting the Rosenbach and Sherlock Monthly. You can do that by donation on our website. You could also become a member. Membership for the Rosenbach gives you free museum admission. It gives you discounts on programs and courses and early access to registration. You can learn more about how to become a member on our website. And we are also show sponsors who help us run these shows for you for free. And that is Lisa Washington. And there we go. My Zoom crashed. I did. Can we all see me now? My Zoom crashed and now I am back.
Yes,
Hi, Ashley.
hi, you seem to be back for me too. I
Yeah,
just assumed I was the problem, so
no, my Zoom just literally froze and crashed and it is yeah, that's really odd. But all righty. You can all see us now again. Let me know in the chat if that is good. Yes, beautiful. All righty. Let's get back to this where I was asking you all to donate to the Rosenbach so things don't crash anymore. So I can afford, so maybe one day we can afford better technology. We do have some wonderful people who support the show, Lisa Washington, but new this year is that Belanger Books has been sponsoring this show. Belanger Book publishes all new adventures of Sherlock Holmes, solar ponds, and occult detectives from the Victorian era to the 21st century. You can explore the mysteries of 221B Baker Street, the horrors of Lovecraft's nightmares, and the wondrous worlds of H.G. Wells. Belanger Books has it all. So you can visit them today at belangerbooks.com. And I will put that in the chat. And we'll see what my recording of this and what the chat looks like. Like I think we all just like I'd multiplied and disappeared and then multiplied and then you guys came back on. I don't even know what this is going to look like in the recording in the end.
I
But
only ever saw two of you.
there you go. So yeah, I just froze and went dead and then it stopped and there we go.
Yeah, I stepped away for a second while you were doing the kind of mid break, and then I come back and there's two of you. Like, so something happened.
Well, I also want to let people know we also have a great many programs and courses at the Rosenbach, and we've just released our course list for the winter and spring, including all of our online reading seminars. You can go on rosenbach.org to discover all of these under courses. And the We have courses on Herman Melville, Virginia Woolf's Mrs. Dalloway, Philip Pullman's His Dark Materials, Johnson and Boswell, Dickens's Bleak House, Sir Jonathan Bate is teaching Shakespeare for the Rosenbach Online, and more, many more with that go along with those. And members get to register now. As this show is airing, member registration has been opened. Next week, the registration opens to the general public. And Anastasia has not only taught some of our courses, but you also attend some of them as well. You're in a Great Gatsby course right now.
Indeed. Yeah, I'm in a wonderful Great Gatsby course because I'm a 19th centuryist, and the Great Gatsby is the 20th century. So I need some experts to explain some things to me sometimes.
There you go. Do you feel like you're slumming, like 20th century?
Well, I think of myself as auditing that course just because I have so much going on, but I'm just listening. I'm taking it in, and it's so rich.
All righty.
Ooh, modernity.
Well,
yeah, my modernity ends with Sherlock Holmes.
That's right.
Where the Doyle is in the 21st or the 20th century already, even though Sherlock's not yet. It's 1897.
Well, actually, the way us 19th century scholars get away with this is we have something called the long 19th century, which goes from the French Revolution in 1789 to the start of World War I in 1914, which is really kind of when the Victorian sort of existing world really breaks apart, and World War I just shifts so many things, and it feels like the kind of collapse of an existing order. So that's how we get away with it. And that's how I get away with, including The Lost World in my book on 19th century science fiction.
Humanities, where you get to just make shit up.
But Doyle really bridges these worlds. He really bridges
yeah.
And there are stories that we will get to, later in Sherlock Monthly, well, in like a year or two, where he's firmly in, the 20th century. Telephones are mentioned, and cars later. Yeah. So it becomes that way in the stories, yet.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so fascinated by it, and I keep meaning to write a book on this. I think I promised Steve Doyle I'd write a book on this, but it hasn't happened on the technology and the stories and how it changes, because the stories go from the 1880s to the 1920s, right? You go from gas lamps to cars and planes exist. But in the very beginning of the story, Holmes wakes Watson up and he's holding a candle, which is just so interesting. I mean, I guess the candle makes sense in a lot of ways. Like, it's quick, it's easy if you just want to kind of have a little bit of light, but just kind of the range of it is so interesting.
Yeah.
I also owe Steve Doyle a book, so don't feel bad.
Oh, good. What's yours on?
Adaptations of The Hound of the Baskervilles.
Oh, can't wait for that.
Well, see, I signed a napkin for Steve Doyle like 3 years ago saying I would write him a book, and I'm pretty sure he still has it. So, like, it's
that's
a binding contract.
Napkins are binding.
Napkins are binding. Well, back to this story. Teresa Wright, the maid nurse, it confirms everything. This is what happened. And then they go to see the crime scene. Holmes then goes and looks at the crime scene itself. And Watson can even say it. The keen interest had passed out of Holmes's expressive face. And I knew that with the mystery, all the charm of the case had departed. So now Holmes is like, there's nothing strange. There's nothing outre about this case that he could really figure out. This is just a commonplace robbery, murdery. Some guy just came in.
Watson's like, but there's a beautiful woman.
Yeah.
I'm just like, the charm has passed.
Well, Holmes examines things. He notices the cords that had held her to the chair, the knots, the knots with which it had been secured. These details only struck our attention afterwards, for our thoughts were entirely absorbed by the terrible object which lay spread upon the tiger skin hearthrug in front of the fire. and Holmes, the description, and it's the Paget illustration. It just that's what we get here, with this terribly dead face and a terribly fiendish expression. The Stanley Hopkins is wondering, how could they have done so mad a thing, knowing that the lady would describe them, and we could not fail to recognize the description. Um, these are the little issues. Well, Holmes starts asking him little questions, or questioning the little things to make sure that this is like, really, is this all we're looking at here? Um, this is when we find out that Brackenwell was such a bad guy here. Set fire, well, as if we didn't know already, but the things like setting fire to his dog, throwing the decanter at Teresa Wright, and Holmes looks at the knots again by which she was secured, and he's looking at the frayed end of the bell rope where it was, snapped off, because she said it was just pulled down, and snapped. Of course, the question, why wouldn't the burglars have thought that that bell was going to ring for servants? Why would they do that? There's no real answers to some of this stuff, but it still doesn't add up. And then Holmes is looking at the wine glasses. Hello, hello, what is this? And then the wine glasses seem to strike him about something. She says they all had a drink of wine after they murdered him, like, woo, and left. And Holmes goes into this whole, it was opened by a pocket corkscrew that was attached to like a Swiss Army knife. And mine has that. My Swiss Army knife has the corkscrew. As a matter of fact, I remember when I bought this, like, I don't know, 35, 40 years ago, I was like, I could get the one with the Phillips head screwdriver, or I could get the one with the corkscrew, and I got the corkscrew on purpose because, of course,
hashtag priorities.
That's right.
yeah, like am I gonna fix things? No.
Why do I need a screwdriver?
You can fix things with a corkscrew. That thing that needs to be fixed being, sobriety.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I did get this little tiny eyeglass,
the glasses thing, yeah.
Screwdriver. But I got it because it fits right into the corkscrew. It's threaded, so you can just put it into there. So there you go. I can keep using that. But that's the kind of corkscrew he used to get the bottle off.
A multiplex knife, just in case people thought that those were more modern than that.
The only help that Sherlock noticing is, well, when you catch him, he'll have this in his pocket, like. So it's just the whole thing gets reinforced to the reader and to Sherlock at the time. Like, there's just nothing special going on with this. Except those glasses. Did you see those glasses, Hopkins? But I can't put it together. Like, no, it's that there can't be anything going on here.
But the ladies, what was it? He says the lady's story is corroborated by every detail.
Yeah. Oh yeah, when you sit there and plot it out at the scene, you could do that.
Yeah. Though in fairness, it would actually, I would think that creating a story backwards like that in the heat of a moment after just committing a murder wouldn't actually be that easy. I would think that, it takes considerable intelligence, and certainly they have to be pretty cool-headed for them to have gone through all of those details.
Well, we get that later at the end of the story when when Croker tells us, it's he and Teresa Wright mostly that do it and figure out how to do this. But there is something to be said for they're literally at the scene of the crime and they get to sit there and stay there and figure out this is how it's all going to work and stage it. Like, that's when he pulls the cuts off the cord and ties her up, and they get to almost act it out.
Yeah, but fraying the end of the cord, that's a nice touch.
Yeah. But at this stage of the story, Holmes doesn't know what's going on, and they get back on the train, but he sits and he's puzzled and something's going on here. Oh, Paget's got a nice illustration of this, of Holmes on the train. And it is here. I like this one. There it is. Pensive on the train. Got the detail right that it's winter here, so he's got the blanket on him.
And wearing a Homburg, which is
all
nice.
bundled up in the Homburg. Yeah, he doesn't have him in a deerstalker. Well, Paget knew when he was supposed to be wearing the deerstalker. So
Right.
even if Doyle didn't always. So here's pensive Sherlock in the train car. This is a good portrait of him. Like to get a real one of that.
Looks really cross.
God. Yeah. Oh yeah, is that too cross? Yeah. Well,
Look at his-
I mean,
look at his
I'm also
right
cranky if I have to get up that early in the morning,
Right?
but
Me too. Especially if you get all the way out there and all you've got is a dead body and a solved mystery.
and
Damn.
it's freezing cold and like you haven't even
Freezing.
had your morning coffee.
I know, it's just terrible.
Well, the worst thing for Sherlock is, and it's ordinary.
Boring.
Like, what?
Boring.
Commonplace. It's commonplace.
And it's interesting that he doesn't give Hopkins a dressing down or say something cutting to him, which is what he usually does in
Yeah.
these cases.
It's interesting. I mean, if you look at the crime before she wakes up and explains what happened, I wonder what it is about that scene that Hopkins thought was worth Sherlock's time. Because it doesn't actually seem like it does seem like the scene, if you walked into that scene and you didn't have any explanation, because she was still sort of coming to, she had the body with the poker, he had a cudgel, there were 3 wine glasses, she'd been tied up. I would go, and there's missing silver. You go, okay, well, burglar came in, surprised them, tied her up, killed him, ran off with the silver. What in that scene was puzzling to Hopkins? Something in there didn't sit right with him either. And he never figured out what it was. He keeps going down the wrong track, but he clearly somewhere in his brain was going, this is not right. This
Two
isn't a
things
common
he
burglary.
says. He says 2 things that he can't put together is how could it have been an inside job when all the servants knew but all the servants were okay and trustworthy. So he didn't believe that the servants were in on it, but he also couldn't figure out why she wouldn't have been killed. If they're going to kill him, they're going to kill her. And then so before he got the story, this seemed like there might be something really hinky going on here.
I don't know.
But
It
again,
still
that's
seems-
it. It's like
yeah.
it's not enough to call in Sherlock.
It's
I
not
think
enough to
you're
call
right.
in Sherlock Holmes because, you know, if they, you know, she fainted. They didn't, you know, who cares? They came up from behind her. They surprised her and she didn't see them or whatever. And the servants are all of good character. You've
Yeah.
determined that, you've ruled them out. They're all for sure.
Before he
check
called
anything else?
Sherlock, like in that
Yeah.
hour or two. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Anastasia, do you have something on that?
Oh, well, no, I was just thinking about how, if you watch a lot of modern day crime dramas, half the time a burglary is just like fake to cover something up. And so
Yeah.
anybody who watches modern day crime dramas, like they're just going to have that instinct that, like, and they're going to go like, oh, is this like a fake burglary? Is it covering something up? And that's what a modern day detective in a crime drama will always
Yeah.
ask. But this isn't the modern day, right? Like this is detective stories are still kind of being developed as a genre, and these tropes are being developed as in the genre.
Yeah. I mean, that trope that everything looks too neat and tidy and normal, that there must be something going on here. I don't know when that comes into play for
Yeah.
people, but it's clearly not in Hopkins's, or even Sherlock's, he's just kind of like, okay, then if it's ordinary, it's ordinary.
Yeah. And the term that gets used at least twice, I can't remember if I think it gets used maybe 3 times, is it's a blind, right? The silver, the
Yeah.
burglary is a blind, and that's another hunting term.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right. So again, we have Conan Doyle using these hunting terms. It's not unique just to him, but it starts to permeate, as you say, Anastasia, the detective fiction genre
Yeah.
that's still nascent. those terms that come from the hunt, right? The hunt for the criminal versus the hunt for the prey animal. It's interesting. I wonder, that would be another interesting study, is when can we trace the first use of the word blind in detective fiction?
Yeah.
We'll get on that research in our copious free time as academics.
Well, I'm pretty certain that you don't even get the kind of hunting out criminals until you get, detective inspectors in the mid 19th century. In the past, when they talked about finding criminals, it wasn't about this hunting them down so much, and these terms that about following clues and doing all that stuff. That's very 19th century.
Yes, it's 19th century, but the term sleuth hound, the dog, the type of hunting dog, it's a Scottish hunting dog. The sleuth hound predates Conan Doyle's use of it as a marker for Holmes. Though now when we say sleuth, you automatically think of Sherlock Holmes. He popularized it, arguably, but the term was used before him. Those associations already exist.
Sherlock comes back suddenly, and a sudden impulse. He's like, quick, and he grabs him, and they jump out of station at like a top, and they jump out of the train, and he's, I can't leave this case. Something's wrong. It's all wrong. It's all wrong. I swear that it's wrong. Her story's complete. The corroboration is sufficient, but he can't. There's something that doesn't fit, and then he tells Watson, don't assume she's telling us the truth. And then once you don't assume that, and you have to put the pieces together yourself without her story, this is when Holmes then notices. And this is what he has preached in the past, right? Don't theorize before the facts. You go to the facts first and then come up with your theories. Well, he kind of does both, but
never trust a beautiful woman.
Yeah, but here they've taken the story first from her and then looked at the scene, and of course everything fit because they staged it. But they messed up because the bee's wing is only in one glass, and bee's wing it's like a film in like old wine, especially port, and which here's something I didn't know until I looked it up. It's from the tartaric acid and potassium in grapes makes this, but it's also what they use to make cream of tartar, which you use in some dishes, the spices. I didn't realize it was the same thing. So it's chemically it's the same thing. But one glass has it. And Holmes tries to figure out how one glass would have it, but the other two weren't. It would have been in all of them as they poured it out. And he assumes the only way that could have happened is if only two were used and they were poured into the third.
See, where I thought he was going.
Go ahead.
See, where I thought he was going with that is, if you drink something out of a glass, it will, like, especially wine, it'll leave a trace, right? Like, if you turn the glass this way and then this way, it'll leave a trace where you drank from it. And if nobody drank from like one or two of the glasses, then that would have been visible, but that's not where he went with it, I guess.
Yeah. I think it's because none of us have ever actually had like wine that's old enough to have bees wing.
Yeah, my pour ain't that old.
You don't find it in the kind of wine that has a screw top on it. I'm just saying.
I'm the old Russian woman. I don't drink wine. I just drink my vodka straight.
Right. That's right. I'm a whiskey guy, so don't look at me.
I mean, I actually, despite my heritage, I'm a whiskey girl as well.
There you go.
So I don't know much about wine.
It's interesting. It has left. Describing it as a film is so interesting because I've always imagined it as a sediment. And in my mind, the image of if you had sediment in two glasses and you poured them into the third, like you think of if there's sediment and liquid, it's always left behind. That actually what would happen is you'd have sediment in the two glasses and no sediment in the third one rather than so My
I've never seen them.
clearly we need to do some hands-on research
There you
with
go.
some wine.
Someone needs to donate some really old
really
wine.
old wine. So if somebody could get on that, we'll start our research for science.
That's it.
We'll make it a Sherlockian meeting or something. I mean, we all know for a Sherlockian meeting, you just need one other Sherlockian and a bottle of wine. So like, let's get on that.
Yes, there we go.
Because I'm thinking there's ways to like as frequently in Sherlock stories, like some of the solutions he gives, you're like, yeah, but if that, like things change. And this one, it seems like I don't know if that really works out. But I really don't know. I've never seen, as far as I know, bees wing, so I
I
don't
don't know
know
the
what it looks
physics
like,
of
and I don't
bees
know how it would
wing.
work. So,
No.
but Sherlock tells us, and I'll take his word for it, as Watson always does, that this is the way it would work. So that's the way it would work.
Yeah, but he also said you could tell what direction a bicycle was going based on which way the tires overlapped. So,
long as it works while the story is being read, you're fine. You're gonna
as long
pick
as
it
you don't have
apart
a whole
afterwards
pack
for
of
2 hours.
pretentious assholes like 150 years later being shitty about it.
Yeah, for 2 hours drinking, talking about it. Yeah, okay. So, well, but Holmes comes up now that they literally, Lady Brackenstall and her maid have deliberately lied, and now we have to find out why they're covering up for the murder. And he knows it's not them because of the way the poker was spent. Somebody was there. Somebody hit him, not them. And uh, no woman could hit a man like that.
Try me.
Yeah. Well, I don't think Doyle believes it, and surely
Yeah.
Sherlock and Watson don't believe it, but yeah, it's just a matter of, getting that right swing into it. Um, they then they then Holmes does the full search. And I love this little description here where he devoted himself for 2 hours to one of those minute and laborious investigations which formed the solid basis on which his brilliant edifices of deduction were reared. Seated in a corner, like an interested student who observes the demonstration of his professor, I followed every step of that remarkable research. That's a nice little touch. Watson just sitting back and watching this great genius at work do all of this. And just like we do. I mean, this is one of those great, reminders that Watson's the reader. He's us in the story, watching Sherlock do this fantastic stuff. And after doing this, he has solved it. Uh, he says, we've got our case, just a few missing links. He even describes him. Oh, and part of him doing it is he examines where the cord was torn off, the wire, the bell wire, and he even tells, Watson, it's a strong man, 6'3", active, dexterous with his fingers and quick-witted. Like, that's a pretty good description. It's still general, but it's a pretty good description of somebody, just from looking at the room. The height is by how to reach the bell pull from the chair where he stood. He does that. There's even blood on the seat, which is this is the biggest ringer for me, not the bee's wing. There's blood on the seat where she was sitting. How did it get there? Right. So,
And he didn't notice it the first time.
yeah, that he should have
Because
known.
he was blinded by her charm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So we have not yet met our Waterloo, Watson, but this is our Marengo. Is that how you say it? Marengo? I guess so.
Marengo.
Nice little Napoleon reference.
Yeah. Where it begins in defeat and ends in victory. That was one of Napoleon's early battles that he almost lost, but then he won. And Waterloo, he just lost. So there you go.
Interesting that he puts himself in the position of Napoleon.
Yeah.
In his battle references.
And it's also, and it's still after Six Napoleons. I mean, published certainly, but also, chronologically, it's after Six Napoleons too. So
it's after he's writing the Brigadier Gerard stories as well, right? In 1904.
Yeah. Yeah. So he was writing those during the time when he took off from Sherlock. Yeah.
Yeah. Little plug for the Brig.
Doyle loves his Napoleon. which we talk about. If you go back, anybody look at the Six Napoleons episode, we'll talk about Napoleon there with is it Paul Chapman on that show? I can't remember. He might be, because I was asking him Napoleon questions. Anyway, the Holmes now, oh, they go to they go to Teresa Wright first. Let's go to her first instead of, Lady Brackenstall. And Holmes gets her to talk, and she's given the whole story now about how Sir Eustace really abused her. He was nice when we met him. And this also gives Holmes a timeline. He learns the timeline of, he's starting to learn the timeline of when they're there and how long it took them to get there. The timeline of their marriage. It's things that he'll need to know. And then he confronts Lady and lets her know, treat me as a friend and I'll justify your trust. And he says, tell me the truth. And she's like, no, I'm not telling you anything. So she's going to stick to her guns until the end. Once more, he pleads with her, please tell me, just be frank. And she says, no. And he's like, all right, nothing I can do. I gave you a chance. And he just is going to leave. And he knows that he's got enough pieces. He knows that I can track this person down who did it, who's involved here. Clearly, she's got someone she's covering for. Now that I know that, I can find who it is, because he can find anybody. And he writes a note for Stanley Hopkins and leaves. Actually, when they go out, he sees the pond that has a big hole in where it's frozen over, but there's a swan in it. So that makes sense. That's why there's a hole there. It's for the swan. But he gives a note for Hopkins and goes back home and right away investigates the shipping. Research the shipping lines from Australia to England and the timeline from when they came over. He finds out there was a first mate on the one ship, Jack Croker. Description sounds like his man. Holmes has solved it. He solves it in like 15 minutes. It's like one visit to like the shipping office. Now I know, who did this. Reliable on duty, but a wild, desperate fellow off the deck of his ship, hot-headed, excitable, but loyal, honest, and kind-hearted. And Holmes is like, okay, I got my man. And now this story really does take a different turn than other Sherlock stories. They get in the cab to go to Scotland Yard, where he's going to give the info. Here it is. This is the guy. You need to arrest him. And he stops. And what does it say? Watson says, he sat in his cab with his brows drawn down, lost in profound thought. Then finally he drove around to the telegraph office and sends a message off, which is the message to Croker. That again, so this happens twice in the story, right? Once in the story, he thinks, everything's okay, and I go to leave, and then he has to come back. And here, I caught the guy, I'm gonna go, and he has to stop, and then he has to backtrack again. This story is, Sherlock as Hamlet. This is like Sherlock indecisive in this story. Now he'll still firmly make a decision, but he's twice we've had this moment with him. Not the usual, quick to react because he's figured it out and he knows exactly what to do once he's figured it out. I don't think we can call them doubts, can we? No, they're not really
reservations.
Doubts. Yeah. But they are reconsiderations. Yeah. That's definitely what they are. This is what I would do, but then this is what something is, or something that would do, but then I have to reconsider it. I don't think that happens often in these stories.
No, you're generally pretty resolute.
And he tells Watson, I couldn't do it. Meaning go to Scotland Yard. Once that warrant was made out, nothing on earth would save him. So he needs saving. This person at least deserves a shot to be saved, because obviously we've heard Sir Eustace is such a horrible human being.
Yeah. Even Stanley Hopkins says, I can't pretend the world isn't better off without him. This house will be a nicer place without him, or a brighter place without him.
I mean, this
So,
woman now doesn't have to live with this man.
right.
Couldn't we just walk away? Um, Once or twice in my career, I feel that I have done more real harm by my discovery of the criminal than ever he had done by his crime. Um, I can't think of somebody will. Are there stories, especially before this, where that has happened? I can't.
I
Or
think
is
that
this is this just creating this world that we don't have an insight into?
I
no,
mean, we've
no, I
seen
mean,
stories before where he's kind of taken the law into his own hands and let the
sure.
person go.
Yeah,
Blue
that we've
Carbuncle,
seen,
I don't.
definitely.
but never because he's like, actually, I can't fault you for the, well,
Yeah,
he does it in Devil's Foot.
that's next.
Yeah, can't fault you for the crime.
Like
This is,
harm happens because he has discovered a criminal. Like like you have done it, and by me finding you, more bad things happened.
like, what is this? He's
Yeah,
changed his behavior based on what prior experience.
yeah.
Mhm.
I don't think that's a published case.
It was a shame
Mhm.
that Lindsay wasn't here today because this is Dust and Shadow.
Yeah,
Like I've discovered who this is, and because I've discovered it, it's going to be worse when it gets revealed.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, I can't think of a case with that, but it's just the world being created,
Mhm.
for us. That these things have existed for Sherlock Holmes. This is the kind of thing he has had to deal with. Um,
Yeah, I mean, the distinction between justice and the law certainly is the through line through this story, but it's a through line through all of the Sherlock Holmes
yeah,
canon, right? Is
Mhm.
that the law is an imperfect application of justice, and Holmes represents to us a better application of justice than the law.
yeah,
And
Mhm.
sometimes they correspond. Sometimes, as justice, he's a servant of the law. Sometimes, as justice, he's in opposition to the law.
yeah,
They do go so far as to actively commit crimes sometimes, like in
yeah.
Charles Augustus Milverton.
Let's get to that. Let's get to that at the end here. The first Stanley Hopkins visits, and he's like, "How'd you know the stolen plate was in the pond?" And Holmes is like, "Well, I didn't, but I figured it was going. Like I told you to look in the
A
pond.
pretty tempting little
There was a
swan
big
hole you
hole. There's
had
a big
there.
hole in it there." They and then Hopkins tells him, "Well, it wasn't the Randall gang after all. They were arrested in New York, so they couldn't have done this. They were already gone." Um, and uh and then Holmes kind of gives, he's giving him hints, but that's all he's going to do. He won't give him the solution. He won't give him any hint that he Holmes has given him enough hints that look, if you do what I did, you could figure
Yeah.
it out. Like you don't have any information that I don't have. And that makes it fair in a sense.
Right. But is
Um,
it Holmes or is it Hopkins who then says, surely there are other three-person gangs operating? It must be
yeah.
one of them.
Yeah.
So
I mean, Hopkins is introduced to these stories as Holmes is like, oh, this promising young detective. And every single story, he doesn't seem very promising to
it's
me.
not great. It's not great.
Um,
Mhm.
he just doesn't seem to get the easiest stuff that Holmes gets. He's like as ignorant as Watson, or more ignorant than Watson, I think sometimes is
Yeah.
Hopkins in these stories. But um,
Well, that's what he does with Lestrade too, right?
yeah,
Best of a bad lot. One of my favorite moments in all of the Basil Rathbone films is when Holmes has Watson lay down in the street pretending to be a dead body, and Lestrade, what on earth are you doing? Well, I'm being dead. And then Lestrade walks off, and Watson goes, "What a stupid fellow!" Just lying in the street.
I mean, it's kind of, you need the Scotland Yard detective to call Sherlock Holmes in for the case so that Holmes can solve it. But then inevitably that's going to make the Scotland Yard detective look stupid. Like you can't do much around that conceit. Or I guess you could if you tried, but
um, but Holmes puts this to Watson too. He says, did I act badly with Hopkins? And I love Watson's responses. I trust your judgment. Very simply, that you're the boss. Like, you do what's right when you make those decisions. And Watson trusts them. And Holmes says, what I know is unofficial. What he knows, Hopkins, is official. I have a right to private judgment, but he has none. He must disclose all, or he is a traitor to the service. In a doubtful case, I would put him in so painful a position and so reserve my information until my own mind is clear upon the matter. So I don't know. It almost sounds like you don't need to explain it if you know you're right, Sherlock.
Yeah.
He's giving this kind of explanation that, like, I don't have to say what it is. No, I didn't. We never said that.
Well, I think he's doing it for the reader, or Doyle
Yeah.
is doing it for the reader,
Yeah.
because, we're reading this and we need an explanation, even if Watson doesn't.
Yeah.
And maybe a more, a readership that, is more aligned with, like, oh, that's illegal. He can't do that. And it's almost as if he's saying, I didn't do anything illegal here. I didn't do anything wrong in the eyes of the law. But he has more than once emphasized he is not a police official, that he is
Yes.
unofficial. He is a private detective.
Not employed by the police to supply their deficiencies.
Yes. Well, Croker shows up now, comes bursting in. Very
6'3" and suntanned with a blonde mustache.
Watson also is always on the money describing big muscular men.
Yeah.
They walk
Again,
in
it's
like,
the physiognomy and phrenology stuff, right? He's a fine specimen of manhood, golden mustached, blue-eyed, Mary, she's
Yeah.
golden haired
He
and
matches
he's
her.
Yeah, they match.
golden mustached. Whereas if we go back to the description of Sir Brackenstall, of his body, dark, handsome, aquiline features, convulsed in a spasm of vindictive hatred, a terribly fiendish expression, right? He's a fiend. He's literally devilish and fiendish and evil. Whereas these are blonde, blue-eyed, innocent looking. Like it's all of that Victorian sort of, you can identify a person's moral character by their physical features kind of thing.
Yes. These are very symmetrical people.
He's also very forthright, and he's right off like, come on, what do out with it. Speak out, man. You can't sit there and play cat and mouse. And Holmes is like, have a cigar, have a seat, have a nice
Do on that.
Holmes says, I should not sit here smoking with you if I thought you were a common criminal. So you don't smoke with bad guys, I guess. And then Croker says something, really cringeworthy here, right? I'll chance it. I believe you are a man of your word and a white man.
Yeah. He was doing so well. The whole story was doing so well.
Well, at least it was a character, right? It wasn't Doyle. It was his character.
All his characters are him. Your characters are you.
Especially this guy who's like, Mr. Loyal.
Yeah, you're trying. This is supposed to be a good guy.
Yeah.
That is a break, man.
That's a bummer that expression.
Yeah, that's a bummer.
Is there.
It's a super bummer.
But that expression is there. You can't read past it without,
Nope.
Noticing it. That racism isn't going to go away until you just point it out every single time, ever. And then hope. But he tells his story now. He met her on the boat. He loves her. She got married. He finds out Eustache is a brute. He goes to see her. And he describes the whole scene that she is a scribe. But what really was is he came in. He went to see her to like have a word with her because she's in this horrible marriage. And the husband came in and he said something. What was it that no woman in England
called her a name that the worst thing that a man could call a woman. Something.
Yeah. And then he hits her.
Yeah.
And then that's the brute, that's the black eyes because he hit her. And then And then he, kills him, but he does it in a fair fight, which I love that he makes sure he emphasizes, right?
Yeah.
He says,
The cudgel was real. The cudgel wasn't something they made up.
it was a fair fight between us. And then he says, I went through him as if he had been a rotten pumpkin, which I love because I can just imagine that's what he's really saying is his head was squashed like a pumpkin with the poker. I love that.
No more than he deserved.
Yeah. So that's how I killed him. Was I wrong? Right away. Well, then, what would either of you gentlemen have done if you had been in my position? Look, I would have killed him, of course. I mean, we're given the scenario in the story where it seems like there's going to be some kind of doubtful morality to this, and Holmes is leading up to it. But in the end, it's like, yeah, you should have killed him, and it's good that you killed him, and you shouldn't go to jail for it.
Right. Well, based on what we know about, and in the story, what Croker knows about Sir Eustace's behavior up to this point, he would have killed them both, right? He would have killed all three of them. Eustace would have killed Mary, would have killed Croker, and would have killed Teresa. He was in a rage, right?
Yeah.
We know that that's the person he is. And so it was self-defense in the end. Now, whether you could defend that in a court of law because, violence against your wife, isn't criminal and particularly that way. The crime, it hadn't happened. It was a perceived threat. Croker was
and
in
also
there.
sort of, he was trespassing.
He was a trespasser on his property. Yeah. So
of course the husband was reacted that way. Here was this strange man in his house with his wife.
Which is what the lawyers would say.
Yeah. But Holmes says, Holmes gives him another test then, right? Yeah. First he shakes his hand, like, thank you. And then he's like, well, let's guess the jury's going to have to decide this. And, and then when it all comes out, but don't worry, I'll let you go free. So you won't be here when everybody finds out. And Croker's like, what? No, I'll face it. She can't be hurt. And this is the little test. There's a little Willy Wonka test here.
Yeah.
Croker put the everlasting gobstopper back on the table before he left. It's like, yes,
he gets the chocolate factor.
He gets
the beautiful woman.
Gets it. Yes, the rich, beautiful lady living at the Abbey Grange. Croker's feet up on the table. He's going to get it all, and he deserves.
They're going to sell that property and go back to Australia.
But we do get a court scene.
Yes.
Holmes now holds a little mock trial. He says, you are the prisoner. Watson, you are the jury. What do you say? I'm the judge. Watson says, not guilty, my lord. Oh, you're free. Vox populi, vox dei. Voice of the people is the voice of God. The Baron Gould note says that's from Alcuin letter to Charlemagne. Which is interesting because I didn't look it up. I mean, some, old English, clergyman in England writes that to Charlotte. I think Alcuin is in England, but I could be wrong. Maybe he's not. But that's like 8th century. An odd phrase in that it's the voice of the people is the voice of the people were right. Is this a democratic kind of political message or something?
Or it's justice
is always right. It's interesting, but it's the opposite of might is right, right?
Yeah, I don't know if it's about them being right so much as them exercising ultimate power.
Yeah,
depends how you're interpreting.
Not right.
Yeah, you're interpreting God. Depends on how you're interpreting God. We did skip over one of my favorite little lines. We don't hear Holmes compliment Watson so thoroughly so often, but you are the British jury, and I've never met anyone so eminently suited to the task, right? That I would trust you ultimately to sit in judgment. You are all Britain in one, Watson.
Yes. More eminently fitted to represent one.
More eminently fitted to represent.
If you take eminently out, it could be an insult. Like, because Holmes will do that with him.
Yeah.
that, and if I ever met a jury, you'd be it. And he could mean that, like, because juries are stupid, but he doesn't here
That's not the
specifically.
context,
He
though.
says eminently.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a compliment.
Compliment.
Yeah. Come back to this lady in a year, and you may find her future and yours justify us in the judgment which ye have pronounced this night. So take a year off, come back, and you're all set. So if it comes back earlier, I guess it'll be suspicious.
Holmes
Or
wants to give the police enough time to actually figure it out. If they
Yeah.
do, then there's nothing they can do about it.
yeah.
Figures in a year, if they haven't solved it, they're not going to.
And as we've said, he's let people go before. Blue Carbuncle is one of the biggest examples where, he lets him go. He's like, come on, this guy's going to go to prison. He's going to be even worse. He's a cringing fool. Let him go now, and he won't commit another crime. Holmes makes these. Judge Boscombe Valley, another one with an Australian. He doesn't inform on Blackjack Ballarat. Is that his name? Or his real name? I forget what his name in the story is. That he's taken on, but because he's going to die anyway, so why inform? And the children would lose their inheritance that was all stolen money anyway. But Holmes does this. He doesn't prosecute people.
But in those cases, it's not that the people who he let off were actually in the right, as we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
In this case, it's not
This is
just a matter of, you are a cringing fool and you'll always be a cringing fool, but at least I won't make a jailbird of you. You won't become a worse criminal than you already are. Or, you're going to die anyway, so what's the difference? In this case, he's like, go off on your lovely new commission on your ship as captain and come back in a year, and you can have the beautiful lady and her title and her fortune and live happily ever after. And she, in turn, has got rid of her abusive husband, and she can keep her maid, and she can keep her house, and she can keep her title, and she can have this, symmetrical 6'3" sailor thrown into the bargain. So everybody gets to live happily ever after. Mustachioed sailor, yeah.
Yeah, other people they did something bad and he let them go. And here, well, he might have killed him, but he actually, according to them in the story, and I think a lot of people would agree, he didn't do anything bad. He literally defended, he hit him, the person who should be, it's more than justifiable. It's almost like he's right. So, but I mean, I think he's right.
It puts the reader in that same moral position, right? What would you have done?
Yeah, we're asked that.
Right, we're asked that, yeah.
All righty. And as I said in the beginning too, this is a kind of I think this is an interesting take on a Gothic story. And Anastasia was pointing out the features of the house and the age of it as they come to it, and that but everything has been changed around in this. And she is, as you were, one of the reasons why this is a favorite story of yours, Ashley, is that she's so strong.
Yeah, I mean, even though the idea for the deception wasn't hers, she's the one who has to sell it. And she manages to look Sherlock Holmes in the eye and sell this story to him. It's not that he has a sense, he's good at reading people. It's not that he has a sense that she's lying. In fact, he's convinced she's telling the truth. It's the scene, it's the evidence that appears to be lying, and he trusts her over the evidence. So I think that's quite a performance. I mean, Watson says she has a quick, observant gaze, and she has wit and courage. I don't think Conan Doyle gives us a lot of women who have that in the canon. They do tend to fall into the victim, villain, vixen dynamic, and I think she sort of breaks the mold a little bit, which is one good quality about this story.
Excellent. Any final words on this one, Anastasia?
I mean, so you mentioned the Gothic. I love the Gothic. It's so interesting to me because especially in the 19th century, the Gothic becomes this very interesting genre that, especially when it's deployed by women authors, makes a domestic space a site of the Gothic, and just sort of reveals all of the violence and the abuse that can be sort of hiding within what are supposed to seemingly be like uh you know, wonderful positive domestic spaces. I'm thinking especially of Wuthering Heights, which is like such a Gothic story. But in the Gothic is used to kind of reveal all of the violence that actually happens within sort of bourgeois, middle class, kind of respectable domestic space. And that's kind of what we get here in a way. And I was reading this and I was reading a lot of the descriptions, and I thought, this feels so Wuthering Heights.
Mm-hmm.
It does.
All righty. Well, that's a good way to end this, Sherlockians. Thank you for joining us for episode 43 of Sherlock Monthly. Thank you for hanging on while things disappeared and came back. I don't know why, but that's what happened. Ashley and Anastasia, thank you both for going on this biblio venture. Ashley, I'd love to have you back one day.
Sure
I hope
thing.
you'll come back.
Yeah.
Anastasia, I hope you'll come back one day. I think you will. We can't stay away, right? It's like, oh, come back.
Yeah. No, it's always fun to do these.
We will return next month with our next story, The Adventure of the Second Stain. According to Colliers, it will be the last Sherlock Holmes story ever. Don't worry, there will be more. With co-hosts Olivia Ratigliano and Mary Alcaro coming on for those. I'll have to ask Mary to do a drink for us. Thank you to the sponsor of Sherlock Monthly, Lisa Washington. Thanks to Belanger Books, publishing all new adventures of Sherlock Holmes, Solar Ponds, and occult detectives from the Victorian era to the 21st century. Visit them today at belangerbooks.com. We couldn't do these shows without the generous support of these patrons, and also you, the viewer, are patrons as well. You can support the Rosenbach through donation. Your support helps us create more programs like this and care for our collections. You can also become a member. Membership gives you early access and discounts to programs and courses. You can find out all that information on our website, rosenbach.org. Again, let me remind you to subscribe to our channel, to like these videos, and thank you all for watching this ongoing series. I am Edward G. Pettit of the Rosenbach Museum and Library, where the game is always a book. Thanks, everybody.